Researching the book, I stumbled again and again across the fact that what we used to call transhumanism or post-humanism, and which was kind of crazy ideas out there or even jokes, that the stuff is already real if you look at the world from the perspective of a tech oligarch. Like for Elon, which data format to process human thoughts in for Neuralink? That's an actual engineering question. And if, like me, you have had the pleasure of reading Mark Andreessen's manifestos, there you see a vision where he's seeing the capitalist economy as a kind of AI-driven machine that does not even need humans anymore, unless they're founders. And I think Elon tried to do the same with Doge, build a government without people. And then you have our fellow dark German, Peter Thiel, whose biggest engineering problem is how not to die. So as we enter the AI age, it seems that humans are sometimes a bit, from this elite perspective, just an afterthought. So Tara, I want to start with you by asking you, how can we ground this new AI age in being humane and bring it back to the humans?
Thank you, Jannis. So I'll just say in a very practical way, the conversation is being shaped by a few very powerful people, but the world is made up of 8 billion people. And I feel, so I run an education organization, and I believe that we don't need to wait for anyone to tell us that you can contribute and build too. And so I'll give a very real example of why we all need, I think like Peter Salan was saying, more ambition so that humans are not left behind in this revolution. So through Technovation, girls find problems in their communities and they actually launch AI startups. So one example is from a young girl in Bangalore in India. She was trying to help volunteers clean a lake that was close by, and she didn't have access to water sensors to kind of see that the water is getting clean as they were actually doing the cleanup efforts. So she decided that she'd build an AI model that would detect bird songs, so as the water became cleaner, more birds would come. So what she found was that all the AI models that would detect bird songs were trained on US birds. And so she decided that she needed to build her own model with Indian bird songs so that this could actually work. And so we have literally 30,000 young women doing similar things around the world. They're not waiting for Elon. They're not waiting for somebody to approve. But it is really a software revolution where if you have an idea, you can actually launch a company and make a big change. And so I really believe that humans need to have more agency and ambition, and that's what education systems need to be teaching, not just the remembering of facts, but really the biggest, hardest problems still remain for us to solve, and we need to be doing that.
Now, you mentioned bias in data, but a different thing is whether systems are open or closed. Now, Katja, you work with open systems, you believe in them, but if we look at where the monopolies are, and as we enter the AI age, or are already in the AI age, of course, there is a closing again, and some of these, if you look at the success of Google that they're now having since they arguably have caught up to OpenAI, you get new monopolies or you get the old monopolies. How do you fight this with open systems? What's your idea for this?
Very good question and very tough fight to have. I mean, in general, you know, when we talked about open systems or open source, it used to be a romanticizing way of looking at, at technology. I don't believe that's the way to approach it. If you have, for instance, data, protocols, distribution in the hand of just a few, there is no competition. There is no, for new players, it's very hard to enter the market. If you collaborate, and that's what this whole invention that brought us here, the internet, is about. It's about interoperability, about collaboration. If you have open systems, there is a lot of people working on failures in making it better, to improve it. If you have a fractioned web, for example, I mean, how are we going to interact? And I give you one example. I don't know whom of you have ever heard of IANA, So it's the Internet Authority for, they are responsible for the IP protocols, for domain names, for numerology. They are responsible that we can interact with each other. So that said, you would say, so why would I care? Well, because they are based out of California, and since they are based under the jurisdiction of a country where we can't trust anymore. I mean, if they decide tomorrow by presidential order or by court order to tax or not to apply any services on any kind of domain, that means infrastructure is on stake. I mean, there's a lot of infrastructure on top-level domains. So there is a lot at risk why we should focus on building our systems and making sure to continue with an interoperable system.
I think we will get back to these questions about political intervention in a minute. But Sat, I want to ask you first, if we stay with the AI business now, I think most of you have probably seen the now quite infamous diagram of NVIDIA, OpenAI, I would think it was in Bloomberg first, where they're moving around money, where they're moving around data centers, and it looks like a closed loop system, kind of like a money-making machine that is self-contained. How centralized is the AI business?
Well, I think it's extremely centralized. It's only a few thousand people that basically own all of the technology. I think this loop that we've seen a lot, and people say it's a good reason to say this is a bubble, is not accurate. I think once you're borrowing money, you're betting on the future, basically. So you're just borrowing money from the future. The bet is that the production increase from those technology is going to be more than the borrowed money now, which I think is probably accurate. But I do think this is one of the big problems, the fact that it's far too centralized and that there's no good path to decentralize this technology, which is going to amplify a lot the problem that we're seeing of centralization of power right now, especially with the oligarchy that's being created in the US at the moment.
And how do you think could you disrupt this centralized system that has already formed in this very new field?
I think it's very hard right now, especially because the tech and politics have been very interlaced. I don't think there's an easy way to do this. I think we're still at the stage where people need to acknowledge how much of an issue it is for such powerful technology to be controlled by so little. I don't think we're there yet. I don't think people have really understood how problematic this is and how central to the evolution of society this is going to be. So yeah, finding a solution is, we're still one step ahead.
But you have worked with one of the people with Sam Altman.
Yeah.
Now he's portraying himself as kind of a Robert Oppenheimer, kind of keeper of the flame of AI and AGI. Have you told him that he shouldn't get a God complex?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind him having a God complex. I don't care. Like, it's that's not a problem. I think like people try to put the problem on the individual, but like the problem in systems are often created by the dynamics of the system. If the incentive structure are wrong, then you can blame as much as you want individuals, but ultimately, if one person is replaced, someone else is going to come do the same thing because the incentives of the system are built as such. So what needs to be changed is the incentive structure of the system. There's no point taking down any specific individual because I don't think that's going to lead anywhere. Like, you can remove whatever, Sam, Elon, Dario, and then there's next people are going to come. That's a systemic failure, not a personal failure, I think. So yeah, that's the biggest thing.
Can I add to that?
Yes, Tara.
I have a different perspective because I feel that the world is very large. I mean, and even if you look at India, there are some incredible innovations coming out that even I haven't seen, say, in the US or China. There's one example, is an app called Blinkit. I used it just a month ago, and within 7 minutes, I ordered something, and it arrived at my doorstep in less than 7 minutes. And the logistics that went behind it, and the software engineering and the AI, and of course the human density that India offers, was just mind-blowing. And it was very exciting to see that there's so much hope that young people have because they have such world-class AI that's helping them code software that they could never have dreamt of coding before. So I think of that AI supply chain as, yes, you have data centers, foundation models, but there's a whole layer of AI applications that can be built, and then you can actually bootstrap funding into the earlier sort of parts of the supply chain. So I feel that there's a lot of room to play here, but what's missing is ambition. And individuals thinking that not to get like really their hopes stamped out by these few names that you keep seeing in the media, but actually look around and see there is a lot of innovation. You can do so much.
But as an educator, what would you tell a girl that says, well, I only want to work for Google anyway?
Google doesn't have that many jobs. It's a big name, but there are not that many jobs in the world. There are not that many multinationals in the world. And I think what is there is that you can actually help a medium-sized business integrate AI and increase productivity. Like, I have a small organization, but we operate around the world because we integrate technology at such a high level. And this is accessible in unprecedented ways today, right? So one person can have a huge impact. That's the message I give to young people.
And we already touched on the subject of politics and the transatlantic relationship. Katja, now the tensions are kind of escalating around Greenland, of all places. And what do you think might happen if this goes on and if the transatlantic, let's say, technological space will be divided? What are the risks there and what can the Europeans do?
I've been to Greenland two years ago with Steffi, and it's an amazing country. You know, very small cities there, and it's when you stand there and you see how much ice has been melting over the last decade, that's frightening, and you stand there firsthand. So, I mean, what are the risks? I mean, the risks are, I don't think we are ready today in Europe, to put it very blank. And there is an idea of, it's called the venture state. I mean, why do we still, public service, for example, in European countries, you have between 5 to 17% of people working in the public sector. So if they would use products that fulfill the open standards that are built within Europe, that's a huge chunk of money that stays within our countries and that we can use to reinvest instead of sending it away where we don't have any access or making somebody liable if something goes wrong. I mean, and we are very dependent. So, I mean, first thing is to look at what's there. The state of Schleswig-Holstein, a small state in Germany, they moved away from US providers over the last in the last year, and they are moving. They are working with European products. So I mean, it's a progress, and they are still moving, you know, to move every faculty and every desk to those products. But it's a first step. But I think we have to invest as well. I mean, the old topic of access to capital. We have invest as well. There are great companies. Jonas Androulis has just been on stage. There are great AI companies in France. So you know, make sure that we keep our standards without over-regulating it. That's as well, unfortunately, the European tendency to over-regulate, so we are not compatible anymore. Make it trustworthy and focus on what there are, because I think time is running very fast, and there's not much time to do that.
Sat, if we talk about the transatlantic gap, you're kind of a transatlantic person. You're now based in New York. What do you think does Europe need? Should we also make a big bet on AGI, or is there a different niche for the continent?
I think it's pretty simple. You have basically this stack of AI that goes all the way from raw material, chips, energy, robotics, and algorithmic, and then the application layer. We basically should pick some of those in which we could win, or at least not be too far behind, and try to catch up. And there should be European policy and just a movement to actually push that forward explicitly. I think it's not even acknowledged in the strategy right now that we do need to catch up on this and that there's a big gap. I think, again, like the narrative of this being a bubble is not helpful for Europe because it gives an excuse to not move forward and not make big bets and push things forward. So yeah, I think there's some areas such as energy, which we could be doing better than the US, probably not better than China, but it's better than the US if we actually push for it, which we're not. And potentially on the application layer as well, if we actually made an effort for this to happen. And especially in Germany, in robotics, could be doing really good. But we're lacking the energy behind this and actually making those changes.
Now, you also have an interest in AI safety, and if we talk about a humane AI, this is central. Has there been a rollback through Trump's second term and Vance that AI safety is now no longer prioritized on the American side?
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty clear, like that it's a big rollback. The Trump government is only optimizing for, I would say, short-term economic wins and geopolitical wins that don't care too much about this. And you can see the communication of the big labs has changed a lot in the past couple of years because they're catering for this administration. But internally in those labs, I mean, I know a lot of those labs, I know the people there, I know a bunch of the leadership. I know that they have the same concerns that they had a couple of years ago. They just don't really communicate it anymore because yeah, the government does not look good on this, so they are updating the way they communicate, the message that they're sending, and I don't think it's very good because people don't realize, but inside the lab, they're pretty concerned about the technology, much more than is being shown us outside the lab. It's just not something they communicate.
So it's kind of a double speak. Now, Tara, the whole backlash that we have seen, we've seen also Elon talk about DEI, Mark Andreessen, we've seen what the Trump government has been doing. Now, for you, if you're educating girls on AI, what does that mean for your work to work in this environment, or is it the same as it was, let's say, a couple of years ago?
Last year was a very hard year. I think we survived, we are thriving, but I think it did make me think quite hard about the message we would proclaim as a problem. For so many years, like my nonprofit, we've been running for 20 years, and we would start with this problem statement that there only 17 to 20% of people in tech are women. And I think that sort of presents it as a zero-sum problem. And I think that DEI has never really been supported on a broad basis. And I think that it only became very visible through this administration. So I think that it actually forced us to have more open conversations about this. I think wherever there's a lot of power to be had, that's where you have the most inequalities. And of course, you're going to see this play out in very sort of stark ways in the space of AI. And I think for me, it is really that the missed potential is like if everybody's not contributing to the innovation, your country is going to be held back. And so I think that's the framing rather than women versus men, because I've seen this many times, like when you say, okay, are you coming for my job? And I think the thing is, AI is coming for all of our jobs. So the conversation is a little bit different now, and I think that's what I learned as a leader last year, that it requires more sophisticated kind of understanding of power and influence.
So when I was writing the book, sometimes I was a bit too deep in the woods, and I was very deep in Peter Thiel's mind and his theories, and in Elon's Twitter stream. So that was a bit of, or extreme, that was a bit of a downer sometimes. But I learned to not end the book or any conversation on this dystopian note. So now I'd like to talk about positive visions at the end. So I would like each of you to tell me what your positive vision is for AI, for a humane AI in the future. Sat, maybe you want to start.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that on the positive side, if the transition to AGI goes well, we basically have a technology that can do anything, that can solve any disease, a thing that can basically do anything that is physically possible to do and engineeringly possible to do for us. And so the realmost possibility is pretty huge, actually. It becomes up to us as a species to decide what we care about, what we want to build, what we want to do. And I think this is a big question that everyone should be asking, is if we could do anything, what we want to do, actually, what matters to us. There's a possibility also to get into a world where we don't really need to work anymore. I think it's probably going to happen earlier than people realize. So I think all those things are quite good and can take a very positive turn. We just need to navigate it properly, I think.
Thank you. Katja?
So as with every technology, I mean, look at this phone. This phone should serve me, should serve you, and so AI should serve you and me, my purposes. And instead of, if I would have a dream for the future, it would be that instead of dividing our societies, it brings us together and you know, being the service that we need and help us to. I mean, we are talking about these problems that are human created, instead of looking at the real problems that are out there. You just mentioned Greenland. I mean, we have natural catastrophes. There is a lot of problems to solve in the world, and I think AI is amazing technology to help us doing it if we use it less for to make a few rich and use it what I'd like to see it as a human-centered technology.
Thank you. And Tara, what are your thoughts?
I think that we actually have a shot at solving some of our biggest problems and actually ease human suffering and planetary suffering, like to actually tackle climate change and to fix the problems that we've created, to help all humans. Like the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, we actually have a shot at them. We've never sort of achieved these goals and the targets that we've set. But I think education has such a strong role to play, because that's the message you want to give young people, and even the people in the current workforce, right? Like you have probably 40 years of productivity still left, and you can actually do a lot. So I just think that aiming at what is our purpose on this planet, and you have the most powerful tools to actually execute on that.
Maybe we also get better headsets, at least for myself. So thank you for speaking to me. Thank you to the three of you. Thank you for listening. And now back to Alessia. Thanks.